99% of fence posts are fixed in the ground with either concrete or a post mix or postcrete like this. But there is another product that's been around years now called post fixing foam. This is a two-part polyurethane expanding foam that's supposed to do the same as this, which I've never used. So today I'm going to use it, give you my thoughts on it and all the pros and cons. And the first advantage, I think, is really very obvious. I've seen post-fixing foams being advertised for years now, although I must admit I've never ever used them. And the one I'm going to be trying today is called ProSet by PostSaver. And PostSaver are those people that make those sleeves that go on the bottom of your posts to stop rot. I'll put Amazon links in the description below for this so you can go and check out the costs for yourself. And I have to say at this point, before I go any further, I'm not being sponsored by these people or anyone else, which is a bit of luck because I think by the end of this video there's probably about a 50-50 chance of me not recommending this product. But I've got an open mind, so we're going to try it and see. Now, when I was buying this, there's essentially two main makes of this. There's the PostSaver make, and Sika also do something very similar. But I must admit, that seems to be a lot more popular in the States, and it doesn't seem that easy to get your hands on in the UK. So the one you'll probably come across is called ProSet. So this is a polyurethane two-part chemical that when you take this strip off, the chemicals mix, and as they mix together they form a chemical reaction and they expand enormously and then fill that void between your fence post and the hole that you've just dug, really replicating concrete or postcrete. The theory goes. Let's see if that works. The first thing I need to talk about really is price. I've just bought this from Amazon, just one sachet, and it costs £26, would you believe. You can get a discount if you buy them in, let's say, a pack of 10. So the cheapest I've found, if you need lots of these, is £19, which is quite a lot of money. That's even more than 2 bags of postcrete, and a lot more money than if you're going to be using concrete, which is essentially the cheapest way of doing it. So that is a bit of a drawback. And although it's lightweight and it's easy to manoeuvre, you don't put the effort in. At £19 a bag, you really need to factor that into the cost of your fence, because if you've got lots of posts, that's quite a lot of money that you're going to be spending on this stuff. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit more about this while I dig a hole so we can try this out. The ProSet instructions suggest that one sachet will fill a post if it's hand dug, but it will fill 2 posts if you use an auger or a post hole digger, which I am today. And that's sinking a fence post to 600mm or 2 foot. So I suppose we'll find out in a minute whether you can halve the amount that you need. And obviously if you can get 2 posts out of one sachet, that's going to halve your costs. The instructions do say you also need to store it at around about 20 degrees C or 68 Fahrenheit before use. So you're going to find it difficult using this in the winter unless you can store it somewhere warm and then bring it out just before you use it. I would think that you'll still get the chemical reaction, but it might just take a long time. But the main benefits are it's light, you don't need water, it's easy to move around, and as long as you don't spill it all over the place, it should be pretty clean because you're mixing it in the sachet and just pouring it in the hole. It should be very straightforward. I'm digging a hole here exactly like I normally would because I'm using a 100 by 100mm square post or 4-inch square post with the plan of sinking it 600mm into the ground, leaving 1.8 metres or roughly a 6-foot fence, which is pretty traditional in the UK. So that's a hole dug and the post is set, and you would notice that I've dug it absolutely as tight as I can to see if it's possible to get 2 posts out of one of these sachets, because that makes a big difference to the price. And that's about as tight a hole as I've ever dug for a fence post. It's about 200mm across, which is about as small as you can go for a 100mm post. If that was in concrete, there's a good chance that the concrete would end up splitting around it because you've not got enough around it. But because we're doing it in foam, we haven't got really that problem. So I've kept it absolutely as tight as possible. And I was lucky I didn't hit any bricks or anything that would have ended up making it bigger. So that's set, it's plumb in every direction. So the exciting part will be now to mix up this foam. Using liquid polyurethane, goggles and gloves are a must, and a quick pull on the pack pops the plastic clamp off and the two liquids start to mix. They're not in two separate chambers, so whatever you do, don't remove the clamp until you really want the material. It says to mix for 60 seconds by pulling the bag backwards and forwards against your leg, but don't mix for too long because it says, quote, the bag may burst, which is a little bit disconcerting as I don't really want this material all over my thigh, so I stop after just 1 minute. The mixed liquid is very free flowing and you pour as evenly around the post as you can. As I'm seeing whether I can get 2 posts fixed with this pack, I squeeze out every last bit and roll out as much as I can, leaving the pack totally empty. So when the hole is so tight and so small, because I'm trying to get as much out of this material as possible, it's quite difficult to get it to go all the way down to the bottom. You haven't got much leeway really, but I'm doing my best, and the odd stone is falling in as well. Having said that, that was pretty quick and a lot less effort than using concrete or any sort of post mix. So that's just about all in now, and I'm glad I'm using gloves. This stuff, as soon as it goes off and it expands, is completely safe, but in liquid form I wouldn't want to really get that all over my hands. So I suppose we wait and see. So this is just after, let's say, a minute or so after I've put it in. It's starting to come up, you can see it starting to expand. Having said that, it's got a long way to go. But in a minute or so, the reaction has accelerated and started to fill the hole. The one thing that has surprised me is how quickly it's actually expanding now. It's probably been about 3 or 4 minutes since I mixed it. And you can actually see it coming up. In real time, you can see it quite easily coming up and gradually coming to the surface. Saying this was actually the kiss of death. We'll come back to see how far the foam came up in a minute. So although it says on the pack that this foam sets within about 90 minutes, it's now the next morning. I've left it overnight, so it's had plenty of time to cure. And the first very obvious disappointment is how far this foam came up the post. Seeing that according to the pack, this sachet should be able to fill 2 tightly dug holes. It's not even filled my 1 tightly dug hole. And there's no way I can dig that hole any smaller, because of 2 reasons. First of all, you need the wood not to be touching the sides of the hole. That just doesn't make sense. And secondly, when you dig a hole, you never quite get it in exactly the right place. So you do need a bit of wiggle room once you put the post in to line it up with your string line and to all the other posts. So there's no way I can dig a hole any smaller than this in the real world. So if that sachet is supposed to fill 2 of these, then it's failed dismally. It hasn't even come up to the surface on my one. And what I did notice was, as it was coming up, when it got near the surface, everything started bubbling as if it didn't want to come any higher. Now, I don't know if that was because of the temperature. Yesterday it was 13 degrees, which isn't unusual for springtime in the UK, and it's not that cold, but it did look as it was coming up as if it was struggling to go any higher. 1 minute it's moving up really quickly, and the next minute it gets to the top of the hole and sort of basically stops. So that's my first conclusion, is that 1 sachet, if you're lucky, will do 1 post, not 2. So bear that in mind when you're doing your costing. Let's have a little bit of a look at whether it's stable or not. So I'm just pushing it backwards and forwards slightly. I'm not putting all my weight on it. And it's already moving, to be honest with you. Now, obviously, if you've got a wooden post or a metal post, there's always going to be flex in the post. So even if the foundation is solid, the top is always going to move. I expect that. What's a little bit worrying and concerning about this is that without putting much weight into it, the whole foundation and all the foam is actually wobbling around, which isn't really a very good sign. And you've got more chance of that happening, even if you did it in concrete, if you do a really small hole. The smaller the hole, the less bearing it's got on the soil next to it. The bigger the hole, the more bearing it's got. So if you really want a really sound foundation, just do a big hole, use lots of concrete. The smaller the hole, the more chance you've got of it moving, whether it's foam or concrete or whatever. So This is another reason why you do need a reasonable size hole, because it's that bearing against the soil that's really going to help you. Now let's put a little bit more weight into it, shall we? Oh, you can actually hear it moving backwards and forwards. Look at that, look, it's actually just wobbling now. It didn't take much to move that, did it? So now it's just wobbly. I mean, in some ways that's failed. I would expect to see that maybe a few years after you put a post in, not the next day. And I would guarantee if that was concrete or postcrete, it wouldn't be in that state already. So I'm not going to tell you what to use on your fence posts. I'm just going to say I don't think I'll be using foam for any of mine. And actually, if it can move like that just by pushing it without really putting much weight on the next day, then I'd rather stick to concrete or postcrete. I hope you've enjoyed this video and it helps you to make your own mind up what you're going to use on your posts. I will see you next time.